According to the French publication Le Figaro, Kyiv promises the West to launch a counter-offensive in 2025, but only if it is helped to hold out in 2024. According to French military sources, in Ukraine, the one who mobilizes first will win. Both sides are reluctant to take decisive action. In Ukraine, society is showing signs of war fatigue, which seems hopeless even if what is at stake is visually important. In Russia, the Kremlin regime would prefer to avoid an unpopular decision that could provoke internal opposition, the article says. Hey, my name is Alex, and this is a quick update on the Russian-Ukrainian war from the perspective of someone living within it. So, will Ukraine be able to muster the strength for a new counteroffensive? Will it be able to hold onto at least what it has? Let's try to analyze, even superficially based on publicly available information. Obviously, war is a costly affair and requires sufficient financial resources. Additionally, one needs both the means and the manpower to wage war. Financially, Ukraine cannot sustain the war on its own. This is evident, as currently about a half of all expenditure are covered by Western partners. But these are not all smooth sailing in Russia either, despite its efforts to show otherwise. The West constantly presses with sanctions. The volume of these sanctions is unprecedented and gradually stifles the Russian economy. The West continues to impose new sanctions and adjust old ones. However, there are peculiar cases, such as the ban on destroying Russian oil refinery sector. I discussed this in previous issue, you can review it if interested. For instance, this week, the United States and United Kingdom have imposed a ban on the import and trade of aluminum, copper and nickel from Russia. Corresponding announcements have been published on the website of the United States Treasury and British government. Our new bans on key metals, coordinated with our partners in the United Kingdom, will continue to target the income that Russia can earn to continue its brutal war against Ukraine, said Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. At the same time, Trump finally supported the approval of aid to Ukraine, but as a loan and not a gift. Republicans in the United States are ready to support additional aid to Ukraine. However, it would be provided in the form of loan. What Ukraine needs now are not so much conditions as the money itself to defend itself. So, in terms of financing, it looks like Ukraine will indeed receive it. Regarding military support, that is support with weapons and ammunition. Russia inherited a large military complex from the Soviet Union, and it is practically capable of producing everything itself. Iran and North Korea also provide some assistance, but considering that these countries themselves are on the brink of war and peace, it is doubtful whether they will be able to support Russia at the sufficient level for an extended period of time, and the quality of this assistance is usually low. For instance, here is a description from a Russian artilleryman. Speaking of the quality of Korean mines, 3 layers of paint, a crooked mold, and as a result the casing is cracked and pitted. The fins are filled with centimeter-thick layer of filler. Guess where it will land? In other words, these shells don't fly where they should, because they are crooked and have bulges and cracks. Will military production in Russia itself meet the needs of war? I have serious doubts. Based on calculations, the average rate of withdrawal of Russian tanks from storage bases is about 77 units per month. Also, about 20 tanks are produced from scratch every month. Considering that the monthly figure for tanks refurbishment has not increased for 5-6 months, it is likely that Russia has reached the scaling ceiling for restoration at a rate of about 100 units per month. Judging the statistic of documented losses, Russia loses minimum 100 units per month on average. So it looks like they are able to maintain this pace of tank losses restoration. On the other hand, there are frequent cases when they go on the attack in ordinary cars and trucks, which is pure suicide. If you have enough tanks and armored vehicle, of course you wouldn't allow that. For example, a recent case where Russians decided to storm our position near Robotyne with 2 Urals trucks equipped with the welded grills for barbecue that's supposed to protect from drone attack. These are just regular trucks without armor. Counting welded grills as armor doesn't make sense. The result was predictable. The Urals were burned and the assault was repelled by the operators of the 3rd Special Operations Brigade Spartan. Not uncommon are the cases of using Chinese golf carts in attacks, even on the front lines, which is also suicide. Here is a recent case. The outcome is predictable and evident, although I cannot show it here. This applies to armor as well as aircraft and air defense systems, which are also being destroyed, and restoring or producing them is more difficult under the condition of sanction pressure. Video of destruction of such systems appear practically every day on the internet. For example, here are recent photos of a kamikaze drone destroyed a Russian Buk M2 on the outskirts of Robotyne. Also, there was a recent incident in Zaporizhia of the destruction of a Russian SAM Tor M2 between Vasilievka and Buchak. The situation with aircraft is also quite interesting. According to calculation by the Insider publication, since the beginning of the full-scale war, Russian air defense has shut down 13 of its own aircraft. The Il-22M airborne command post was managed to land after being hit, but the aircraft requires long-term repair. This is only what they themselves shut down, and Russian aviation has also been successfully shut down by Ukrainian defense forces, even before the delivery of F-16 jets. So Russia's military complex, despite its hiccups, is still sustaining the war for now. And what about Ukraine? Obviously, Ukraine would have long lost on its own. Therefore, signals from the United States of America that aid to Ukraine will soon be approved allow for an optimistic view of the future, well, at least for the next several years. It is also important to note the assistance from European countries. One of the most crucial is Germany. The DI2R publication publishes fresh data from a sociological survey by the German TV channel ZDF on key issues regarding Ukraine. In the last 2 months, more and more people in Germany are becoming convinced that Ukraine needs more military aid than before. 42% of respondents advocate for increased assistance, which is 9% more than in the survey conducted in February 2024. 31% believe that the current level of assistance should remain the same, and only 22% believe that Ukraine should receive less military aid. Moreover, the fact that the military aid currently being provided is insufficient is evidenced by the fact that only 8% of respondents believe that Ukraine can win this war with the existing weapon. The vast majority of Germans, 55%, also support Ukraine's accession to NATO after the war ends. Only 36% of respondents are against it, and 9% have no opinion. Support from most other European countries also remain at a high level. For example, the initiative of Czech Republic regarding ammunition support for Ukraine, or Macron words about deploying French troops to help. All of these are positive indicators for Ukraine and evidence that Ukraine will not be abandoned to its fate. Therefore, military support for Ukraine from the West will be forthcoming. Now let's look at the situation concerning whom to fight with, meaning the soldiers. In Ukraine, there are certain problems with mobilization, to be frank. This week, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine passed a new law of mobilization aimed to improving the situation in this area. If I am honest, I have serious doubts that it will improve anything, considering the text of the law. Sometimes it seems to me that Ukrainian deputies deliberately want to sabotage it. But most likely it is just the influence of the Soviet past, which leaves its negative imprints on laws and processes. The state tries to play by force, although history shows that things may not go well with Ukrainians. Ukraine still has room to develop. Despite this, at least Ukrainians fight for their own, and as history has repeatedly shown, if they themselves decide that they need to go and stick to the Russians, they will do so on their own terms, not under the pressure of laws. And what about Russia? Lately, they have been loudly proclaiming that they have a large influx of volunteers after the Crocus Hall terrorist attack, which they are trying to pin on Ukraine. As soon as they shout about something so loudly, it means the exact opposite. Moreover, evidence of problems with mobilization is the constant increase in monetary allowances. For example, starting from April 1, 2024, in the regions of Russia, those who sign a contract with the Russian army for a year or more will receive a one-time payment of 1 million rubles from the regional budget, which is about $10,000. This is just an additional payment on top of the main salary and other bonuses. And these are just some unprecedented sums for Russia. There are also very frequent cases of recruiting mercenaries from poor countries in Africa and Asia. Often these people do not understand the Russian language or what is expected of them at all. Obviously, if you have enough of your own soldiers, you would rather recruit those who at least understand you. Moreover, Putin has been actively hinting at negotiation lately. If we do switch to the talks I mentioned earlier, about resolving all issues by other means, we are certainly ready for that, as I have said many times before. The Kremlin is in a hurry to push through the Istanbul agreements, which essentially constitute the capitulation of Ukraine. According to this agreement, Ukraine becomes a vassal of Russia, without an army, NATO membership, or prospect for moving westwards. In the Russian army itself, problems with personnel are only increasing. Soldiers, upon experiencing the reality of the Russian army, are escaping from their unit more and more often. For example, in March 2024 alone, Russian military courts handed down 684 verdicts in cases of desertion. Since the beginning of the war, nearly 7,400 cases of desertion have been brought to courts. The majority of them are concentrated in the Moscow and Orenburg regions. So, Russians understand perfectly well that their army means being sent on mid-grinder assault, and they are not eager to go there voluntarily. After all, they see footages of burned tanks and killed soldiers on the internet, or such appeals from wives of those mobilized asking for help, and stories how their husbands are not being protected and treated like cattle. Overall, it seems that Russians are in a hurry to achieve at least some success, while Ukraine is still awaiting approval from the United States for assistance, as evidenced by their intensified attacks on the entire front. So, on Chasiv direction, Russian forces have captured Bogdanov, including the southwest part, and continue storming action towards the settlement of Kalinivka and Orlova area. The enemy has partial success in the southern part of the Stupki-Golubovsky 2nd Reserve, on a section up to 480 meters wide and up to 770 meters deep. North of the Klishchiivka fortified area, the Ukrainian armed forces repelled a tank attack by the enemy in the area pointed on the map. Description of the situation from one of the brigades fighting near Chasiv Yar. A concentration of enemy forces and means is underway near the city, with ammunition supplies and rotations. Ice drones are handing around the clocks. Orks constantly conduct reconnaissance by combat. Preparing for the main assault on the city is underway. On the Avdiivka direction, south of Novokalinovo, Russian forces have partial success along the railway towards the station Zarya. The enemy entrenched north of Berdychi on the section up to 1.2 kilometers wide and up to 500 meters deep. In the Umansky and Semenyuka area, the Ukrainian armed forces repelled all attacks without changes. Towards Yasnobrodivka and Umansky, the enemy entrenched on a section up to 5 kilometers wide and up to 1.6 kilometers deep. In Krasnogorivka, Novomikhailivka and Robotina, there are no significant changes. The fighting continues. So, despite everything being complicated for Ukraine in the war, and the Russian advanced little by little, there are no significant prospects for their offensive. Let's take the area of Avdiivka as an example. The Russians have been advancing here since October 2023, and here they advanced for half a year. As we can see, they managed to cover 12 kilometers in 6 months, considering that the city was already semi-encircled, which significantly facilitated the Russian task of capturing it. So, in the sector of the front where they have the greatest success, their pace is 2 kilometers per month. On other front it's even less. Let's assume 1 kilometers per month on all fronts, which is unrealistic, but let it be. With Ukraine's length of approximately 1000 kilometers, they will need 83 years of fighting to reach the western borders of Ukraine with the current speed. Therefore, despite all these horrors of war and all the hardship, nothing has been decided in this war yet, and Ukraine has all the chances to win and regain all the territories under its control, as well as to lose and become a colony of Russia. So, as the classic of Ukraine literature said, keep fighting, you are sure to win. And that wraps up today's video. If you found this information helpful or somehow insightful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!